All right, let's get this fiasco started. Yeah, set things up so I can see any chats that may pop up. Well, gee whiz, this thing was working. There we go. I'm going to click the button and wait 10 minutes for it to load. I love that ominous music. Ooh, the frame rate's probably gonna stink. I'll need to lower the... Or I can leave it. Just let me know how it looks on your end, because I can always take pictures while not streaming. I can, if I'm using the streaming software, it slows down my gameplay considerably when I have everything maxed to the hilt. But anyway, let's see. We've done... Yep, we're not even halfway done with this series. So, by all means, those who are taking a look can chime in. Let me know how it looks. I'm thinking this isn't really a category I like that much. I find it funny that there were gladiator arenas during the cultural period of the the remaining vestiges of ancient Egypt, in the pre-Christian era. But it was, I think, later. Like almost 200 years in the future, but they put it in to add a bit of excitement to the game. So I'll take a quote-unquote fast travel to here. And I'm going to turn down my browser audio because I need to have it comms up until my wife is safely home. I'll switch tunes. Actually, I don't want to do that. It's this guy. I'll switch back to the professor. Okay, cool. I got you. Hello. Yes. Now I can see you. I was wondering if things were working. Alright, let's get the show started. Hey, kiddo. Now, I don't know how the imagery is on here, but we'll give this a go. Let me know if it's too choppy, because I'm not super enjoying this, but if it gives me a chance to take some good screenshots, I can do that while I'm here as well. The tour is a good opportunity for a lot of this stuff.
Welcome to the Gladiator Arena.
Okay, super. At least it's good for you. It stinks a little on my end, but it's not unplayable. And I don't have to do any fighting, so if I had to do combat with this, it would be totally unacceptable. Can you see a difference, though, actually, from before? Or is it just the same? Because I can't imagine the resolution being that noticeable.
While gladiators would not perform in Cyrene until later in the Roman era, the team decided to include a gladiatorial arena for two reasons. First, they believed it was important to portray this aspect of Roman life. And second, they felt it would add interesting gameplay possibilities.
And I think it was a shrewd and justified move based on that. So I don't really have a problem with it.
The first gladiators to enter the arena were prisoners of war.
Thanks. I wouldn't think
It was
there
a
would
spectacle of violent clashes between men and against wild beasts that lasted nearly 1,000 years.
1,000 years of gladiatorial slaughter. Now that's human progress. I'm glad we're so much more advanced and we don't have violent competitions between pugilists anymore. We're so sophisticated now. Well, except for MMA and karate and boxing. Football, American football.
Eventually, volunteers began to enter the ring. For status and money, many of the more skilled combatants increased the quality of the entertainment. Thus, the profession of gladiator came to be. Bound by contract to the master of the gladiators, the fighters were fed, trained, and guarded in barracks.
I like coming here as bike sometimes, and I know this is kind of mean, but sometimes you can slip a sleeping dart on somebody and really wreck the party. These folks are having a time of their lives. Whoops. You step in those little circles and you kind of do something, I guess. Like, yep, that's my dance. Ooh, geez, these guys are practicing wrestling moves. I thought they were dancing at first. Like that was a little weird. Oh yeah, hockey. And you know, a lot of people watch hockey just because they want to see some guy get their teeth kicked in or punched out. And there's Egyptian workers. You don't see Egyptians participating in the fun stuff. You only see them doing the most horrible, menial shit. I mean stuff. Pardon my language. And I kind of... it's a story that needs to be told. People still live that way.
Gladiators were separated into heavy and light armored fighters, each with their own set of specific armor and weapons. Organizers often had two audience-favored factions face each other in combat.
The two audience-favored factions? Oh. Like the... Oh, wow. Yeah, really make it a sporting event, huh? For big bucks. Yeah, that was pretty intimidating looking. Yeah. That helmet would look kind of intimidating, wouldn't it? I mean, on the one hand it looks scary, on the other hand it looks like they got a picnic basket on their head. Yeah, come eat before the blood fest. I'm gonna let the sun come up on this. I like doing this stuff in the daytime. We don't need to party like rock stars. Hello. How are you? Who's your daddy? And she's not interested.
Ου καλώς έχω.
Hi, I'm from the 21st century. Don't you want to give me a go?
Ου κερίνου δι. Ορκαίωση των θεών. Σίγαρε ρόδια την πιστευόμην σε σύζυγ.
The events were highly organized. Fights were held with a background of music and supervised by a referee. Death, either in the course of combat or by decision, was not always the only way out for the loser. Several were released due to their performance and gained great notoriety as celebrities.
Yeah. I wonder if what that's all about. If it got chiseled out or something, if that's what they were supposed to look like. Some of those mosaics are weird looking. Tiamonius. Artus. Pelophones Pi. Cupido. Or Cupido. Well, a lot of these competitions, they were slaves, but they were a part of a school of gladiators, and they did have enormous amounts of pride and prestige, and there were quite a few women eager to be mounted by one, and they paid for the privilege. Literally, women would pay. Sometimes guys, I think, would pay big sisteri and drachmae for some gladiatorial action of their own. But yeah, women, men, they paid for some of their more personal performances. And I don't know, I'm sure that gladiators liked some of this stuff, but I'm sure they did a lot that they had to spend a lot of time drinking and taking opium to get their mind off of it. Yeah, the Roman schools, I think they were called a ludus. And, yeah. So my sweetie pie is going shopping. She's making a list. I'm gonna put taters. And this... Oh, we're still on the outskirts of Cyrene, and I didn't even look at what I picked next. But this looks like... I don't know what it looks like. Oh, Silphium. No, I don't know. Major source of economic wealth for Cyrene.
Welcome to Major Exports of Cyrene.
Cyrene is mentioned in the Cosmos. Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Let me switch back to YouTube on my phone so I can read. What's potatoes, precious? What's potatoes? Potatoes!
Cyrene's main source of economic wealth was in the cultivation and export of poppies and silphium. Though the opium oil from the poppies was also an export, little is known about this crop. Information about the cultivation of silphium, however, is more accessible to us.
Can you imagine a cultivated flower being just made extinct from over cultivation or improper cultivation and greedy plundering, finding it wild? Oh, we'll just take it all. Climate change probably had something to do with it too, but it was something that I think the 21st century would have liked.
Silphium, with its yellow flower, was considered a gift from the sun god. Grown solely in this region near the Mediterranean Sea, silphium extract was exported at high prices and was so crucial to the wealth of Cyrenaica that it was depicted on their coins.
Behold! By the way, I got the pink lotus stamens, and while I mowed, I let it brew and near boiling water in a cup, and I just kind of left it there. And it was slightly warm when I had it. It was not objectionable in taste, and I think it does have a nice calming effect. I'm not as antsy and grouchy as I was, so there might be something behind
Silphium's
it.
roots produced a resin used by both the Greeks and Romans in medicines intended to cure cough, fever, indigestion, and many other ailments. It was also used as a contraceptive. In a compilation of culinary recipes from the 4th century BCE, the herb is mentioned in various recipes, including a flamingo dish.
Can't imagine eating flamingos. Yeah, well, I bet you it was a much better alternative than crocodile dung, which I can't imagine somebody using that as a contraceptive other than to deter people.
High demand, overexploitation, and possibly a shift in climate all contributed to the eventual extinction of silphium. The last mention of it dates from the 4th century CE, and to this day, no traces of this plant have been identified.
That's kind of sad. One of the legacies of mankind. Well, I mean, it was literally used. Okay, I don't want to get knocked up. I mean, I'm in the mood, but I don't want to get knocked up, so I'm going to get that crocodile dung, and there was other things they mixed with it, but yeah, to me, yeah, considering that crocs, I mean, on top of all that, okay, crocs are meat eaters. So the dung of meat eaters is not as subtle as vegetarian creatures. I mean, I would imagine probably the worst that I can just off the top of my head, not that I spend hours thinking academically of the aromatherapy uses of animal dung, but I would imagine one of the worst would be dung from carrion birds or like hyenas. They have a digestive system that prefers rotting meat. I doubt really that translates to pleasant smelling droppings. Okay, well, I guess we can go from top to bottom. This one might get a lot more interesting. This is the pyramids. And so we can start with the origin of the pyramid. Yeah. And I don't spend much of my proverbial shower thought thinking of, animal waste.
I wonder what Mayan poop smells like.
Oh, the Great Pyramid. I know I'm not in Giza, that's for sure.
Welcome to The Origin of the Pyramid.
Dun, 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 dun.
The origin of the word pyramid is controversial. Most believe that it originates with the Greek word pyramis, which referred to a bread of conical shape. Life and death in ancient Egypt were modeled on the cycle of the sun. The perfect shape of the smooth-faced pyramid became associated with the metaphor of the pharaoh transformed into one of the sun's rays in death. Pyramids represented the Benben, the primordial mound of the Heliopolitan creation myth. These stories permeated every aspect of Egyptian life to a greater or lesser extent.
I knew that it represented the Benben, but I thought the obelisk was more of a sun ray thing, but I guess the pyramid makes more sense, really. I think obelisks look really cool. I can't remember what the Egyptians called them, though. That kind of bothers me. Hekenu.
During the pre-dynastic period, the development of funerary practices was different, depending on whether one was located in Lower Egypt or Upper Egypt. Well before the pyramid, there was the burial pits. It is on the site of Merimde Beni Salome in Lower Egypt that we find the oldest funerary site, dating back to 5000 BCE. Study of the tombs revealed that the bodies of the deceased were deposited in a shallow grave, in a fetal position. Though a few objects were recovered from these graves, they offered no insight as to the social class of those interred within.
That was over 7,000 years ago.
In Upper Egypt, pre-dynastic practices are easier to study, but reveal more complex funerary rites. They are divided into two cultural phases, Badarian and Nagada. The Badarian phase ranged from 4400 BCE to 3800 BCE. Small necropolises were discovered on the outskirts of villages, revealing the emergence of a funerary cult. The bodies of the deceased were lowered into an oval grave and covered with goat or gazelle skins. Items needed in everyday life were added alongside the body.
Well, that was an evolutionary step. I have some academic questions about the pyramids only because of the water erosion at the Sphinx. What bothers me so much about the fact that there's water erosion on the Sphinx, I wonder, because it's close enough to here, they don't show it. You can't see the water erosion on the Sphinx in this game. But the fact, the only reason I have questions, I'm not going to be one of those, oh no, the pyramids had to have been made by the first civilization, and all this. I think that's, without better information, that's just bullshit. I don't believe in aliens having made these damn things. But these pyramids, the first, have outlasted, if these are 4th dynasty, supposedly, they were made with such unbelievable precision, that it is, you can attribute great craftsmanship as the ways and means. You can do that. But by modern construction standards, we could not do any better than that with all of our special equipment, even with lasers and computers. It blows my mind. And there are mathematicians and engineers who have looked at these things very closely and measured them and said, these people understood pi. And not only did they understand pi, but they understood planetary precession. How the hell did the Egyptians do that? And it's a fair question, but the later pyramids that were made were of much lesser quality. It's like starting off making, there were some before, like the Step Pyramid. But okay, look at this thing right here. There's the Sphinx. Look at how small the head is. Now the Egyptians, one thing they did do is they changed things. Like if they didn't like a pharaoh prior, they chiseled out the pharaoh's name. And the head's a bit small on this thing. What if this at one point was a lion's head on there? And an Egyptian decided to make it look like a pharaoh. And so, yep, there's a Sphinx, and maybe that was the origin of the Sphinx. But since there is water erosion, actual water erosion on the construction of the Sphinx, and the only time that water erosion could have taken place over the thousands of years necessary for it to take place, the thing had to have been made at around 12,000 BC, even as late as 16,000 BC, when this was a place that had lots of rainfall. And I think the Greeks got much of their stuff from Egypt, to be honest. But anyways, the reason, it's not good enough for me, and I'm so sorry I took such a long departure with that. But it doesn't answer it satisfactorily to me just to hear them say, no Egyptologist would agree that that's even possible, so therefore, it can't be. That's the best explanation I've heard so far. That's not good enough. There's water erosion on there. It's not sand erosion that looks like water erosion. It's water erosion. Any geologist will tell you that.
During the 3 Nagata periods ranging from 4000 BCE to 3510 BCE, funerary practices evolved in complexity. The shape of tombs changed from oval to rectangular, mimicking the homes of the living. The size of the burials increased and funerary items became more stylized and numerous. Tombs gained complexity with masonry, wooden veneers, or raw bricks added to strengthen the structures. In time, socially stratified necropolises emerged. For example, in Hyrcanopolis, the elite and commoners had separate necropolises.
And I think this is a pretty good theory as far as the making of a pyramid. If you can kind of see these things, they're pretty. They're more like tuned, but they're the Arabic word I think was mastaba, which is the Arabic word for bench. Although I think the mastabas were more perfectly square. They didn't have little pylons on the side, but it was just, a rectangular, a glorified rectangular box. Well, they put a mastaba on top of a mastaba on top of a mastaba, like a layered cake. And there are unanswered questions, and the means to find those answers are the same means, to dispel theories too. That's the magic of science and reason. If that's your approach, that takes resources.
The term mastaba, meaning massive bench in dialectal Arabic, refers to a form of funerary architecture that was present in Egypt from the Archaic period to the Middle Kingdom. An evolution of the burial pit, mastabas were generally composed of two parts. A structure was built above the ground in the form of a massive rectangle with stepped walls, and a subterranean burial chamber was located underneath. Smaller mastabas often surrounded the much larger tomb of the king. These generally held the remains of the king's relatives and courtiers.
And to be honest, I understand their desire for ceremony, but I'm telling you, nothing in this world says, please rob me, like something like this or a pyramid. And something else that kind of gets me, I don't know, what I really should do is at least look inside a mastaba in the game, if there's one that's open that looks like it might have a funerary chapel. They've all seemed to have been filled with sand. Whoops, my bad. But it was obvious that mastabas were tombs. But it seems like all the tombs that I go to, there's writing on the wall. There's symbols. Oh, cool, we get to go inside. Inscription, something like that says, hey, I probably ought to let the sun come up. I've been running my mouth. But I guess you don't see any inscriptions in here either.
The arrangement of the substructure of the mastaba evolved during the course of the Old Kingdom. From the 5th dynasty onwards, mastabas often featured multi-roomed substructures, with sometimes up to 30 rooms. Also, the quantity and quality of decorated surfaces increased noticeably, as well as the number of statues found within.
Okay, so they did find statues and stuff inside them from the 5th dynasty onward. So I guess the funerary texts and that just came later. I thought it was so weird that with something so magnificent as the pyramid, and an academic that was talking about the pyramid saying it looks more like it has a tool function or something. I'm thinking I could consider that, but I'll go to this first.
The 6th dynasty would see art used to its utmost. The entire surface of a mastaba would be covered in scenes of daily life, illustrating the prosperity of those lucky enough to comfortably spend eternity near the pyramid of a pharaoh. The best example of this type of mastaba is the tomb of Meroruka in Saqqara.
That's cool. But what I thought was funny, the one of the guys that was talking about the possibility of not just the Sphinx being something of antiquity beyond imagination, but his assertion was, who could be so megalomaniacal that they would demand a structure that would take 100,000 people 22 years to build, or 90,000 people 22 years to build, if that's how long it took? We really don't know. There's no architectural papyri, and that's so frustrating. Always leaves us more questions than answers. One of the cool things with archaeology, and like I mentioned earlier, I enjoy obelisks so much. But you would need to have, you would need a megalomaniac, an extreme narcissist. But his assertion was that nobody could be that big of a megalomaniac to want something that took all those resources. Oh, you bet your ass. You bet your ass there are people like that. We have one acting as a president in this excuse for a country. And, well, I will say this. There's no evidence that the pyramids were made with slave labor, actually. It was free labor, but guess what? The pharaoh was a god king. A pharaoh was its own thing. He was a god. He was above a king. His authority was absolute in all things. You didn't question the pharaoh ever. You just straight up did whatever he said. And it was the kind of power structure that allowed, even in antiquity, for things like this to be built. But it is so weird to see there was a progression of pyramids. You know, like there was the step pyramid, which is, I think it suffered some structural collapse. And then the bent pyramid, which, in order to preserve its structure, was, the angle changed. I think it was to avoid a collapse. And then from there, I believe it was from that to the Great Pyramid. So you create in 3 or 4 tries a Porsche of pyramids. And then you go in the future making other pyramids that are like Model Ts. But from that time, from the 4th dynasty to the future dynasties, I think it was the 12th, where they started doing pyramids again. You had a lot of time, and you had an intermediate period, because this is Old Kingdom stuff. So a lot could have been lost by that. The Step Pyramid Complex of Djoser. I'll just go there. Sorry to run my mouth so much. It's probably not really instructive, just a bunch of voyable diarrhea. Djoser. This is gonna be a bit lengthier, and I'll try to not run my mouth so much.
Welcome to the Step Pyramid Complex of Djoser.
Hey, Djoser, how are you?
The Step Pyramid is at the center of an enclosed complex, comprised of temples, models of palaces, and artificial constructions, all built for the afterlife of Pharaoh Djoser. The funeral complex itself covers 15 hectares and is located on the highest point of the Saqqara Plateau. It's clear from the elaborate detail and scale of the complex that this was a technological marvel of its time. The only fragment of information regarding the design plans of the complex was discovered on a section of stone containing an architectural sketch of a vault.
I really appreciate the artistic help from Jean-Claude Gauvin, because I don't think anybody else in the world does what he does or has done. I need to sip some water. I'll do that with this one.
The Step Pyramid is the first monument built of stone. Standing at 60 meters high, it was the tallest of its time. Built 4,700 years ago, it was originally intended as a mastaba, which was a flat-roofed rectangular tomb. Its famous architect, Imhotep, may have felt this was too humble for the great Pharaoh Djoser and began to add the steps.
I think that's a reasonable assertion. Oh, we've already seen that image. I tell you what, though, Imhotep was an amazing person in his own right. He was an architect, a priest, a healer, a teacher, and he could have been an inventor for all I know, but he knew a lot of herb lore, and I think the Egyptians deified him, made him a god, and the Greeks actually made a god patterned after him. I'm trying to remember what they call him. I think it's Escalatheus. But he had some life, and he had an extraordinary tomb of his own, which I'm sure was looted and plundered. And I wonder how this looks today.
The Step Pyramid complex is enclosed within a 1,600-meter-long wall that is 10 meters high. This large wall was made out of white limestone and oriented along the north-south axis.
Imagine what this place looked like right when it was done. Imhotep. I-M-H-O-T-E-P.
While there are 14 doors, only its eastern door was intended to accommodate the living. The remaining false doors were built as portals for the king's Ka to pass through. Along with false doorways, the walls were designed with bastions and steeples resembling a defensive wall. The positioning of these design elements suggest that they were related to the Hebsed festival.
And the Ka, I guess it's his spirit, but it's a little bit different because the Ka is what made you you. The Ba was like your body, so they thought that the spirit had two parts, the Ka and the Ba. And you'll see that the heads on these sphinxes are a lot more properly proportioned. And I sometimes wonder if they were, inspired by the original.
The only real entrance into the complex is at the end of a long, narrow passageway. This enclosure has a stone canopy carved to resemble wooden logs. At the end of the passage is a large opening. Meant to resemble a doorway, it has carved doors and hinges that are permanently open and immovable.
I really am amazed. Even though these look quote-unquote perfect, you see the chips on every individual brick. It doesn't look like a cut and paste job that the artist did here. It looks like something actually put together, and it really, really is impressive to me.
The corridor is lined with 20 pairs of columns up to 6 meters high, built by stacking stone drums. The completed facade was made to resemble reed stock bundles. Traces of red paint were found on the columns, along with black paint on the support walls. This would have had the effect of blending the walls into the shadows to give the red columns the illusion of standing on their own.
Boy, that would have been something to see. I hope someday they make a game where you get to see everything as it was when it was fresh and new. Oh, a nice little bandit guarding things. Hey, bandit. Man, these columns, I mean, they look like real things. I mean, I have seen a lot of cutting and pasting with hieroglyphs and stuff in some of them.
Chambers are located on either side of the columns and are thought to be chapels representing the provinces of Upper and Lower Egypt. According to some Egyptologists, the arrangement of the rooms may be symbolic of jurisdiction and judgment.
This is a perfume vase. And I really wonder what this is made out of. Anyway. There is I think it's fun, but they're coming out with a new city building game, but Children of the Nile is quite fun. You can build your own city, participating in politics and trying to keep your people happy, healthy, assign priests to do jobs and stuff, and it's quite a lot of fun, and it's quite immersive. I wish I could say that I was really good at it. I'm not, but I haven't played it more than a week at a time. Good golly, Miss Molly. Just what an amazing construction job this is. For what, 6,000 years ago?
Guarded by a line of carved snakes,
5,000.
this tomb is located at the southern end of the courtyard. The burial chamber is beneath it, down a 30-meter deep shaft. The low-ceilinged chamber resembles a mastaba and is relatively intact compared to the later burial chamber. The tomb is made of pink granite though there is evidence it was once polished limestone. Too small for a body, it is possible that the tomb was intended for the king's ka, or to hold the canopic jars containing the king's organs. Later traditions in burials would have the canopic jars in the same chamber as the body.
The universal sign language thing for Egypt is to take your index finger, just, like you're saying, number one. You make a fist, extend that index finger, and then you bend the first joint a little bit, and then you put it up to your forehead. That's Egypt. They call that the uraeus, the cobra symbol that the pharaoh would have on his headdress. And I made a joke about the uraeus. That's the thing there. It's also the southern United States word for what gets kicked when an individual is displeased. For example, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to kick your ass. That's the worst pun ever. Brought to you by DB Game.
A polished limestone staircase leads west from the tomb to underground apartments. Some of these rooms were intended to accommodate the king and his family in the afterlife. Many large jars of pottery were found, including some that still had deposits of beer, milk, and oil inside them. The false doorways are decorated with reliefs of the king taking part in rituals. In these reliefs, he is seen carrying agricultural tools, running, and performing a ritual for the reanimation of the deceased.
I actually read about this and heard about this in a lecture, and I got to see this in the game, and I went into Djoser's tomb. And it was a thrill just to even see it, because I knew what it was when I saw it. But this is what it looks like now. What it must have looked like when it was first done was much more smooth and polished. But I think he said this was made with faience. And he said it looked more like bathroom tile. But I guess it would done to look like papyrus, I guess. But anyways, yeah, that was in Djoser's tomb. I don't know if that would be open in the discovery mode, but
the architect Imhotep chose stone as a building material in order for the complex to last. Following the completion of the initial mastaba, Imhotep devised a burial of more ambitious dimensions. He set about stacking mastabas on top of each other. Evidence shows that the pyramid was enlarged twice by additional cuts into the steps, eventually reaching 62 meters in height and 121 meters by 109 meters at its base.
They found jars of honey in tombs that were still edible.
A staircase allowing the pharaoh to enter the divine world was represented by a tiered pyramid, oblong in shape, completely enveloping the original mastaba. The pyramid itself is a solid structure. All of the chambers and tunnels are beneath the structure.
Yeah, same here. I would dearly love to have seen these places when they were new.
Pharaoh Djoser the Sacred was the founder of the Third Dynasty. He ruled for 19 years. During his reign, he was known as Horus Negeriket, divine of the body. He was given the name Djoser several centuries after his death as a sign of respect, and he is regarded as one of the greatest pharaohs of Egypt. An apocrypha was drafted in his name during the Ptolemaic period, 2,500 years after his death.
Oops.
Djoser was associated with the sky god Horus in his human form. A plinth near the step pyramid is inscribed with his name and associated with Horus. He was the first to reside in Memphis, making it the central hub of government for the region. Djoser was known to have built many temples and monuments before the complex at Saqqara. The funerary complex was the first of its kind and would mark Djoser's greatest architectural achievement. The funerary complex was built to resemble Djoser's palace, with the stone carved to imitate mud brick, trees, and reeds. Creating these details and softer textures in hard stone would have been a time-consuming, labor-intensive task. Much of the complex is designed to accommodate the Hebsed festival, allowing the king the ability to affirm his rule even in the afterlife.
Oops, pardon me. Sorry for the hissing there. Okay, I'm gonna awkwardly walk this way. And I want to take I think that's Memphis over there. Yep. Memphis is where the pharaoh lived, and it's where I love to hang out sometimes. Just walk slowly and watch the people and hear the people. There's the entrance. Oh, I said I wouldn't run my mouth so much, so I better pull away here, but that just looks flippin' cool. I love this. I took a bit of a vape hit, and I try to mute it when I do that, because it is impolite and douchey. I don't want to be like a fedora vaping poopy pants. I don't know if he's walking with great swagger or if he's got arthritis and is beat up from all his work.
In the corner is a temple referred to as T. This temple is among the most mysterious structures in the complex. Its outer facade is plain, while inside it is decorated with intricate jed pillars and carvings. It's possible that this place was intended to be where the Ka of the king materialized, symbolically visiting the platform of the Hebsed courtyard from the afterlife.
If you ever look at something that looks kind of like a bird with a human head on it, those are like Ka statues. It's almost like they were made, I think, to put in these complexes to, like, if anything should happen to the mummy, the Ka could still be there. And sometimes they had statues of themselves put in there, so if their mummy ever got corrupted, the Ba could be served by that statue, which was made of, more sturdy material. At least I think that. I'm kind of taking the scenic route with these. I know that most people probably run to these.
The Hebsed festival enabled the pharaoh to maintain universal order and renew godly powers. Through a series of trials and religious rites, such as dance, offerings, and visiting the sanctuaries of various deities, the ruler's vital force and divine nature was confirmed. The celebration was meant to represent the ruler's jubilee and would take place every 30 years, though the deadline was not always followed. The earliest known ritual dates from the First Dynasty.
I think in the old days, when a pharaoh got too elderly, they ritually killed them. And I think the Hebsed festival was sort of a ceremony for the aging pharaoh to reinvigorate himself magically by engaging in archery competition and wrestling with younger people. I need to brush up on my unilateral, but I know that's like an sound. I think that's P. And yep, definitely need to practice. I want to say that that's D, but I don't. Nope, that's not it. That's not a D. The hand is a D. Yep, I need to practice some more because I'm getting rusty. But anyway, yeah, I see stars. That's pretty nifty. It has to be old because it's a lot of unilateral hieroglyphs. I just got an app on my phone that was like a flashcard for sounding out hieroglyphs. That's a unilateral hieroglyph. And they didn't use vowels, really. So, left a lot to interpretation, but knowledge of the Coptic language helped. It's the actual words that are mostly missing. You can read the word but still not know what the hell it is.
Within the complex of Djoser, southeast of the pyramid, is a dedicated space for this essential ritual to be performed by the king even in the afterlife. The Hebsed courtyard is lined with false chapels and equipped with a platform featuring 2 staircases meant to represent Upper and Lower Egypt.
What I forgot to imply when I was giving my treatise on the Hebsed festival, where they would engage in these competitions, but I'm pretty sure some of these participants were well compensated to let the pharaoh beat them in a running race and in a shooting match and the wrestling competition. It was like, see, I'm still strong. The pharaoh's job was to take troops to battle. Egypt was not a peace-loving country. They were always kicking the hell out of the Nubians, going north and screwing with the Libyans. The Semitic peoples, if they saw the Bedouins starting to settle places, they whittled their numbers down to keep them under control. The Bedouins were nomads. I don't really admire this about Egypt, but they had such a superstition that was so ingrained in their religion that everyone wanted to be buried at Abydos, which was in Upper Egypt. It's like if you didn't want to die away from home.
Located in the courtyard, the 2 pavilions are believed to represent the palaces of Upper and Lower Egypt. Rectangular in shape, the 2 replica structures face one another. Their facade is similar to the chapels of the Hebsed ceremony, with column crowns carved to look like falling leaves. Because Queen Hetep-Hernepti and Princess Inetkas's names were discovered on a stela near the pavilions, it is thought that these funerary chapels were intended for them.
I think that's a reasonable assumption. But yeah, they would not go to the duat, or the proper afterlife, if they were not mummified and entombed in Egypt. So they never really expanded their territory, even though they had the means to do so. They never took over what they called Kush, which we later called Nubia or Punt. You know, they were so fearful of dying away from home. And it's like you would cease to exist.
The funerary temple is on the north side of the complex, facing the stars where the deceased ruler was believed to travel after death. Within this temple was the pharaoh's serdab, or cellar. It is a small, enclosed space with one wall sloped to match the first step of the pyramid.
And it was all about prestige. You go somewhere and you take everything that isn't nailed down, and then you come back in a couple of years and get more of what they make. And you take some slaves home to serve you.
The north wall has 2 observation holes. A statue of Djoser is seated on the throne, wearing a mantle and a tripartite wig with a crown known as a Nemes. Representing the king's ka, this statue looks through the observation holes into the courtyard, enabling the king to observe the ceremonies and receive offerings in the afterlife.
When you see some of the cheap low-grade Egyptian movies or movies depicting ancient Egypt, you'll see peasants and workers wearing that pharaonic meanings or minis. That was, you were the pharaoh to wear that. There were some high priests and stuff that could wear something kind of like that. But that was an upper class thing. That was not something that farmers and workers wore. They had a simple head covering. And I wonder about that too. But I think I can tell you. I can tell you as far as the religious stuff that they did by the tombs, a lot of it depended on your status. Some tombs had the tombs them, you know, they had the actual tomb, but there might be a wing in the tomb complex where a person could put an offering of beer or bread, maybe even external Ushabti statues. The Ushabti statues were servants for you in the afterlife, because there's going to be things to do in the afterlife, plenty of work to be done, and if you had one, you know, for every day of the year, they would, you know, there was an inscription on there that said basically, when called to work, you will volunteer yourself. So the Ushabti would do the farming work for you, or any menial chores, so you could just sit and enjoy yourself, and and drink your beer and have your bread. There were Ka priests that part of their duties were to spend a couple days of the month, or even the week in some cases. They were granted a lot of land, which they hired other people to work while they stood in the tomb, said prayers, and did work. And there was a deal saying, you keep this up, you know, you keep that land, it'll be part of your estate, and your offspring, when you get too old, they'll come here and yeah, have people tend the fields, and you can enjoy the fruits of those labors.
The north wall has 2 observation holes.
Oops.
A statue of Djoser is seated on the throne,
guess that was that.
wearing a mantle and a tripartite.
But yeah, that was kind of I mean, we might see it as silly, but what I thought was funny is that a lot of people, they seem to think that the Egyptians obsessed on death. I would argue that they loved life so much that they didn't want it to end. So they did everything they could to keep it keep it going. They didn't have, until the Greeks came, they didn't use coinage either. The main currency was, I mean, it was barter based, but it was food. Didn't have to go very far. Let's see which one. Okay, we're still at the Step Pyramid. Cool, we might get an inside look. This is probably going to be one of the most popular ones to look at. Cool.
Welcome to Inside Djoser's Step Pyramid.
It's been a while since I've done these, so this is almost like it's new to me. Except for the university lectures that I listen to. I love their sound effects and stuff.
The architect of the Step Pyramid, Imhotep, was a man of great importance to Pharaoh Djoser and ancient Egyptians in general. The base of a statue of Djoser, discovered in 1926, celebrates Imhotep as a carpenter, sculptor, stonemaker, and chief of the seers. Little is known of Imhotep's day-to-day life. While he is credited for writing medical texts, it is for his role of architect that he is most famously known.
When you play the game, you can't do it in discovery mode, but when you play the game and your torch hits cobwebs, they burn away. And I kind of like to tidy up tombs just for my own enjoyment.
From the design of the pyramid to the elements within the complex itself, Imhotep set out to create something that would immortalize his king. An architectural achievement, the Step Pyramid was made from stone blocks instead of mud brick. It was the first time Egyptians built a monument of that height. Imhotep explicitly intended for the stone to reflect natural materials. The funerary complex of Djoser remained famous throughout the centuries and millennia, and its great architect, Imhotep, was deified by ancient Egyptians during the late period.
I don't know who's doing this voice work, but I would suspect that he is either from Canada or if he's from the U.S., that he was born and raised in Michigan by his accent. I'm going to find that out at some point. But I'm pretty sure he's Canadian. Certain professions were ladies only, and one of them that were well-paying was professional mourners. Can you imagine all this being put into all this food put into a tomb as an offering or as something to sustain you? Unbelievable. It's such a waste to put all this on somebody that's dead.
In addition to the central subterranean palace built for Djoser, 11 wells were dug. Each went to a depth of 33 meters and connected with a horizontal gallery extending for about 20 meters. The first 5 galleries were intended for members of the royal family.
So you can share in Daddy's glory in the afterlife. At least he gave a crap about his family, huh? Oops. Well, not only did that startle the living snot out of me, but it woke me up a little bit, so good. I remember going in here at Bayek more than anything.
Two passages lead underground and branch off in 3 directions to various magazine galleries. This vast underground space accommodated sections for storage and ceremonial offerings. One of the tunnels, starting on the east side of the pyramid, contained 40,000 stone vessels, many of them belonging to the king's ancestors.
Super. And I'm going to take a peek through there. I want to see if I can see those green reeds. I should probably just follow the regular way in there, and they'll show it. Yeah, that's just to grab some goodies when you play the game. I'll just follow the tour, the guided tour.
The burial chamber of Djoser is located at the bottom of a 28-meter deep central shaft. According to Egyptologist Jean-Philippe Lauer, the chamber was originally made from polished blocks of limestone, while its ceiling was decorated in 5-pointed stars. At some point, however, the limestone blocks were replaced entirely by pink granite blocks, leaving behind only fragments of limestone blocks decorated with stars.
And guess where that pink granite came from? Aswan. I think all the granite that they use, if you see an obelisk that was made in Egypt, or all the obelisks were made in Egypt, they were from Aswan granite. And the weight of the things is unbelievable.
At the foot of the chamber are many tunnels going in all directions. This maze of tunnels, galleries, and chambers stretches over 5 kilometers. There are a number of dead ends and false doors. They may have been intended for the afterlife, rather than to fool thieves.
I don't think this diagram's going to help much. I don't get much from that because I'm not geared toward that so much.
Unlike the Great Pyramid of Giza or Menkaure, the Pyramid of Djoser does not have any extra openings dug out by thieves. There was no need for them. Because of the easy access into the tunnels and along the corridors, thieves had little trouble clearing out the temples once inside. It is unknown when the mummy of Djoser was stolen. All that remained was a left foot, found by French Egyptologist Jean-Philippe Lauer in 1934. This architect, who devoted his whole life to meticulously exploring the complex, believed it belonged to Djoser.
Well, I think just about anybody would in that position. Yeah.
The Pharaoh's apartments, also known as the Blue Chambers, are decorated with blue-green tiles meant to imitate the reed matting that covered the walls and windows of his palace. The stone is carefully curved and painted to look like the rolled mats of open doorways and curtains.
I got a real kick out of this when I first saw these. Just because I knew what they were based on the lectures that I was listening to from Audible. And I know it's not overly grand. It was just knowing what they were that gave me pause.
There are 2 long rooms running side by side along a north-south axis. The south room has false doors separated by stone panels, while the north room is a corridor which allows access to side chambers. Nearby chambers originally housed the pharaoh's treasures.
Those are simple stars. There's some where you see on a dark blue ceiling gold painted stars. Hope you're still around and enjoying these. I love the details they put into this. And man, I wonder if I ought to just try and make one of these boxes on my own. I would love to have something like that just for the heck of it.
The door frames are made of fine limestone and carved with the king's name. As in the south tomb, reliefs are carved into the doorways. These reliefs show the king performing rituals and visiting divine sanctuaries for all eternity. Their interiors are fictive additions made by the team to add to the wonders of the tomb. It is clear from the elaborate detail and scale of the complex that this funerary monument was a technological marvel of its time.
Inside these tombs, there's when you play the game, there's a thing that allows you to get an ability point when you use it. It makes an interesting noise. I thought they did a lovely job putting this together. This is my jam. I don't know what all these things are. Like the thing with the UAI on the top. Boxes, I don't know what they contained. Anyways, that's it for Joser. And I wanted to ask if you wanted to continue, because you've been kind of quiet. I don't know if you got something going on. But we can always reconvene later. Figurines. rugs. And those are Ushabti figures that I'd mentioned before. The servants that will get up and do a job for you in the Duat, or the afterlife, or the Field of Reeds. Oh, cool. A papyrus scroll. Let's see if I get a close-up picture of that. Try to change my angle a bit. I'll increase the exposure a bit. Bolster the saturation some. And for effect, I will add some vignetting. What stinks is, well, I think at least the lines disappear when you take a photo, but these glowing points don't. I'll increase the exposure. And the saturation. And I'm going to lower the temperature a little. I don't know if that's worth a picture, but take one. I can always take it down. And for the time being, I will hang up the discovery hat until prompted to continue. So, fair wind for now. My wife just got home. And it's time to help put away groceries anyway, so I will return.